welcome to the Newburyport Literary Festival. This is our 20th year and our 5th year of virtual sessions. And we are so excited that we made it to 20 years. We've had a wonderful celebration here in Newburyport over the weekend. Jonathan, who's here with us today, was able to join us for some of that, and we just have had a great time. And we've had a wonderful morning with several great sessions. And, we started the virtual programming because of the pandemic out of necessity, but it's been awesome to continue it because we get to have conversations like this with someone with Jonathan, who's local, but Kirstin, you are not. Are,
Right. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah.
yeah. So um, it's great to be connected in this way. So thank you both for being here. Now I'm going to introduce them a little bit more later, but let me just quickly say thank you to our founding sponsors, the Newburyport Bank and the Institution for Savings. We can't do this without them. They are founding sponsors. We also have several other sponsors, including the Massachusetts Local Cultural Councils, Mass Center for the Book, Ipswich Beer, and several others. Please check out our website to see all of them. And we rely on donations from our participants and from people who love the festival. So thank you for investing in the fest and being part of our community for all of this time. I also want to shout out our local bookstores, Jabberwocky Bookshop and the Bookshop of Beverly Farms. As you probably know, yesterday was Independent Bookshop Day, so it's a big weekend of reading, and these are our partners, and we hope that you support local bookshops, either ours or your local. I think we all know how important it is to do that. Let me introduce our guests. Johnathon Pape has directed opera, musical theater, and theater throughout the US and abroad. Highlights include Terence McNally's Master Class for Hibama, the National Theater of Israel, Jake Hagee's Dead Man Walking for Tulsa Opera, Sondheim's Sweeney Todd in Milwaukee, and others. He has co-written and directed Carmen Inside Out, a one-woman version of Carmen that he created with mezzo-soprano Kirstin Chávez. And it has played in the US, the UK, France, Switzerland, and Japan. And that, of course, brings me to Kirstin Chávez, who has sung roles at the Metropolitan Opera, Sydney Opera House, Covent Garden, and several others. She is known as one of the definitive Carmens of today, having performed the role across the world. And of course, she also co-wrote and performed Carmen Inside Out, which uses Bizet's music, but explores the character on her own terms rather than through the patriarchal lens of which she is often portrayed. She's also an artist in residence at the University of Utah. And before I turn it over to you, Jonathan, I just want to say earlier this morning I did a session on women in myth, and we talked a lot about the patriarchy in those stories as well. So for me, this will be it'll be super interesting to hear all about it, and for everyone else as well. I leave it to you and have a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And we really thank you for the opportunity to be part of Newburyport Literary Festival and have this important discussion about how to sustain a performing arts career. And a big shout out to friends from various places around the world that may be on the call. We think there are people, friends, and colleagues from Australia, the EU, Japan, and elsewhere. So thank you for being here and being part of the conversation, particularly if it's the middle of the night for you.
Wow.
Um,
Yes.
so it's well known that a career for a performing artist, whether you're an actor, a dancer, a singer, an instrumentalist, or any combination thereof, can be a really difficult path. The competition is fierce, the financial rewards are often meager, and the rate of attrition is very high. But yet, if your dream is to share your own special gifts with the world, it's something you can't not do. It's something you simply have to try. And the unfortunate part of that is that we lavish great care and expense on developing talent, but too often, young artists are thrown to the wolves and completely on their own when they leave school to enter the professional arena. They've never really been taught the practical skills they need to navigate what is essentially self-employment in a really difficult industry. So, as performing artists who have been able to live our dreams over long careers, Kirstin and I wanted to pass along what we've learned. We certainly recognize the difficulty of this career, and sometimes we have the scars to prove it. But we definitely believe it's possible for young artists to have fulfilling, sustainable careers. You just need the right information, a commitment to proactive engagement with the business of your career, and a willingness to be honest about who you are, what you want, and how you're going to get there. That's why we wrote the book.
So thank you, Jonathan. And I wanted to just start by telling you a little bit about us, so that you know a bit about our background. Leslie was kind enough to share some of that information. I'll start with myself. I grew up in Southeast Asia, strangely, but moved to the United States to go to college and did a bachelor's and a master's in vocal performance. Then, bizarrely, in an effort to try to start paying student loans back, I started working as a financial planner and sold insurances and investments with MetLife. And then the panic set in, and I started thinking, oh my gosh, I better get going. And so I started doing some auditions and then began my performing career, which has lasted a good long while. And I'm so very, very grateful for that. There's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of reasons to pivot and adapt. And we'll go into more of that later. But one of the things I ended up adding to my career was a teaching aspect. In 2016, I began as artist in residence at the University of Utah, and have very much enjoyed the privilege of passing along things that I have learned along the way to the next generations of singers. That has been truly, truly wonderful. In the pandemic, of course, all of our singing engagements disappeared, mine and everyone else's. And that left me with a bit of a problem of too much time. And I worried for my sanity. So, of course, I immediately thrust myself into some studies. Before I had started my professional singing career, I was training to be a certified financial planner. And I sat for the big national exam, huge, daunting exam, and did not pass. But 3 months later, I started my operatic career, and so didn't feel so bad. But when COVID hit, I thought, you know what? I never passed that exam. Maybe I'm going to give that a try. So I took all of the college courses, about 5 college courses you have to take. I retook the courses, and I then sat for the big national exam in March of 21, passed, and started my own financial planning practice to add to my list of things to do. And that has been truly wonderful to do alongside my other duties, as it were. But Jonathan, one of my favorite people on the planet, has also had a very interesting career path. He finished college himself and then went on to immediately learn how the real world works while teaching in academia himself, and got a lot of real world knowledge and experience on hands-on. But then also the bug hit him hard, and he thought, wow, I've got to get going. And so he moved to New York to start his professional career as a stage director, which went along super well. And along the way, of course, he realized he would have to feed himself. And so he decided to go to work for a marketing agency. And that's where he learned so many really valuable things about business, how to sell things, how to present things in a way that will make people want to engage. And these special skills and tools really basically augmented his capabilities and his success. After a short time, well, not a short time, but he decided to return to academia while continuing his career as a stage director, traveling around and whatnot. But he started out at the Eastman School of Music, not so bad to start at the top, and was teaching opera and things like that there, and then became the director of the opera department at BOCO, Boston Conservatory, where he was for about 10 years, thriving, changing the curriculum, helping to try to arrange things such that the graduates from that school could be better prepared. And one of the ways that he did that was by creating and teaching the Business of the Opera Business class. And so that was a hugely successful endeavor for him, which made it sort of an obvious segue for me, because in 2020, I believe it was, I decided to create the class Applied Entrepreneurship for Musicians. And Johnathon was an obvious partner to help me in that. And so together we created that class. We co-taught it for the first semester. And then we thought, you know what? Why don't we just write the book? Because we're almost there. So that's what we did. And that's how this book came to be. As Leslie mentioned, Johnathon and I have also collaborated on a very, very special project called Carmen Inside Out. I got tired of having stage directors try to make me treat Carmen as, I think, a lesser character than she is, in my opinion. And so we decided to write it ourselves. And it's a one-woman show that I have taken around the world, telling the story of Carmen from her point of view. So Johnathon and I have had a great, great time collaborating on many things yet to come. But that's where we have started. So Johnathon, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, one of the things about writing this book that was so important to us, we realized that even though we have both worked a lot in opera, I also direct in spoken theater and musical theater, but we realized that really across the board in the arts and the performing arts, a lot of the ways that you survive and thrive in a career are the same. Obviously, your art is different and how you do your art is different. And the purpose of the book is not to tell you how to do your art, it's to tell you how to do your business and your career. Your career is your business, and approaching it as such gives you a leg up in what can be a very daunting profession. So, yes, the bottom line for a successful career in the arts still is talent, but talent alone is never enough. You have to train that talent. You have to build reliable technique that can see you through all the challenges you'll face over the course of a very long career. And you probably have heard it said that young artists have to develop a thick skin to make it in this business. Well, we actually think that a better choice is to develop a flexible skin, to develop a combination of awareness, resilience, and informed action. You have to be aware of what's going on around you and inside you within the business, but also within yourself. And learning how to be flexible and adaptable is really critical to success. So, achieving balance isn't about being still, it's about responding to whatever's happening around you and making constant adjustments, sometimes minor, sometimes major, to stay on your feet. And finally, it's important to let your awareness and resilience inform you in making decisive action that's based on who you are, what you value, and what you know. Everyone experiences challenges and disappointments over the course of a career in the arts. But thickening your skin so you don't feel hurt means you're also not able to fully experience the joy and fulfillment that comes with living your dream. That protective skin can actually become an impediment to the emotional flow that's essential to art. So Kirsten's going to talk to us about the new realities of a career today.
Thank you, Jonathan. And yes, just to reiterate what you've said, having a thick skin is really not the solution. Paying attention and noticing when things are shifting and being willing to shift with them is absolutely critical. So my career officially started in 1997, and the changes that I have seen have been quite immense and stark. And at the time that the changes were happening, unexpected. And I think what I've learned from that is that we should expect the unexpected. And so being adaptable to be able to shift with things as they are shifting around you is really critical. The career, when Jonathan and I were starting, we were told very explicitly that if we were doing anything other than our career, anything other than, for me, singing, that I would not be taken seriously and that I would not succeed. That was a very clear message. And it is absolutely the opposite of the message I give to my students today. It's really, really important that we have a holistic view of our careers that might include other kinds of ways of making money. And we'll talk in a minute about why that's so critical. But basically, you know, it's you it's important to remember also that when fashioning a career in the performing arts, and again, we're not talking just singing, we're not talking just stage directing. This is applicable to dancers and actors and even professional athletes potentially. The same things are true. But basically, the idea is you can learn from other people's paths what works and what doesn't work, but there is no one right path, particularly nowadays. And so take what you can learning from other people, but you must be willing to forge your own path and take responsibility for your own direction at every level. Things are always changing, technologies are changing, and tastes are changing. And certainly COVID brought that into stark reality for us all in many, many different ways. And even since COVID, when things are open and we almost forget what happened to us back then. We're still feeling the lingering effects. Um, it seems from our vantage point now that people are not so quick to rush into the seats of performing arts spaces and whatnot. They're much more interested in the possibility of staying home and streaming virtually what's going on. And so again, technologies sprinted to meet that need. Live streaming became a real thing that has not gone away and exists alongside. Many times, opera companies will, of course, encourage people to come to live performances, but perhaps also live stream a performance. I was just doing Carmen with Kentucky Symphony, and the second performance was live streamed for those who couldn't be there. That's much more standard now, where that would never have been the case unless you were singing at the Met and doing an HD broadcast. So again, the need to adapt to those kinds of new realities is really, really critical. And there's not just one way to have a career. It can look many, many different ways. And again, as Jonathan will discuss in a minute, the idea of a portfolio career where we have perhaps more than one passion or interest that we are pursuing for means of making income or means of personal fulfillment. And therefore, it's important to think more like an entrepreneur. See needs and fill those needs. That's what an entrepreneur does. And a performing artist who can think more like an entrepreneurial business person is much more likely to be able to recognize shifts in reality as they are happening and actually rise to those changes and therefore find success even as things change. And finally, it's important also, bizarrely, to make sure that you have a happy life and not just a successful career. Perhaps more in the performing arts than in other kinds of careers. the effects of unhappiness or undue stress or conflict within yourself are going to be much more prevalently felt. It's hard to sing when you feel oppressed, or when you feel distraught, or when you're wondering where your next paycheck is coming from. These are all things that should be part of the consideration as you're planning your career and taking into consideration the idea of what's going to make you happy also in life. For some people, that means, being a performing artist, that you also want to have a family and children, and that can be planned for, that can be managed. But it may also mean that you have more of a say on where you want to live. At the time that I was starting my career, it was simply expected that anyone who was going to be a serious performer had to move to New York. But I knew that that would make me very unhappy, as New York is not the speed that feeds my soul. And so stood up for myself, and I explained to my agent, that I would commit to coming into New York absolutely whenever I was needed and at the drop of a hat. I committed to that, but that I would not be living there permanently. And I made that work. And nowadays, that's not so odd. That's not such a strange thing. But again, taking into consideration what's going to make you happy as a person is also very important in terms of what's going to bring you success as a career. Back to you, Jonathan.
Great, thank you. So just a few more words about portfolio careers. As Kirsten was saying, this is becoming much more common, and that's a very good thing in our industry because it makes for more financially stable people and often happier people that are pursuing the arts as a career. So a portfolio consists of various things that you do. And yes, your primary way of expressing yourself artistically, say acting, singing, dancing, whatever, is really an important part of that portfolio. But there may be other things that may or may not be industry related that are also an important part of the portfolio. For example, some artists expand to writing or producing content or working in another artistic medium that's not their primary one, say photography. It could also be something that you're really interested and passionate about, but isn't directly related to the performing arts business, but related to your underlying mission. We'll talk more about that in just a couple of minutes. That adjacent interest can help feed you literally, but also metaphorically as a way that feeds your soul. So you're not necessarily working a day job that sucks all the life out of you, but doing something that's also rewarding and on mission. So that could be something like an activity or skill like yoga or massage therapy or something like that. Maybe it's a cause you believe in, such as working with at-risk kids or starting a prison theater group. Maybe it's something like real estate that you're passionate about helping people finding a home. It could be any different kind of things that helps feed you and also feeds your soul. So the point is there's a lot less stigma these days about building a broader portfolio to support your dreams. So when we started writing the book, we wanted to break it down into four distinct areas. Living the dream is about, first of all, defining the dream. Once you've defined it, how are you going to share it? As you're sharing it, how are you going to finance it? And finally, what are the changes and adjustments you need to be aware of as your dream starts becoming reality? So, we're going to talk a little bit more about each of these areas. In our way of thinking, the most crucial part of living your dream is starting from a place of getting really clear about who you are as an artist and a person, your mission. Now, your immediate response as an artist might be, oh, I'm an actor, oh, I'm a dancer, I'm a singer. But that's really just one way you express who you are, even if it's a really, really important way. Your mission is what's underneath that. It's the why that you act or sing or dance or whatever, and what is expressed through that. It's also a unifying factor in everything you do and can be a really important touchstone for all kinds of decision making about your career and about your life. Am I on mission or not? So we start the book with helping you discover how to identify your mission and how to go about living that. Once you know that, it's easier to identify the other things that make you special, what separates you from the pack. So in business terms, that relates to branding. Um, and as you continue to define your dream, you also get clearer about how to use specific business tools and structures, like creating business plans, creating a board of advisors, and so on, to help support you and who you are. With your dream clearly defined, then you can share it much easier. Your career is your business, and you want to present it in the best way possible. This is about learning how to communicate effectively about what you do in both spoken and written forms. Written forms like resumes, media, etc. It's about creating a network of positive and healthy business and artistic relationships that can be very tricky at times. And that means whether you're working with an important director or a conductor, or you're working with a colleague or a collaborator, how do you stay true to yourself and relate to that other person as a co-equal colleague? It's also learning how to work with the professionals that will help you, agents, managers, mentors, and other key allies. Um, and absolutely, one of the things that's important about living your dream is learning how you're going to finance it. And so Kirsten is going to talk a little bit about that part of the book.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yes. So one of the benefits of becoming a CFP, Certified Financial Planner, is that I have a lot of opinions about money. But one of the things that's still true, bizarrely, in our country here in the United States is that there's still a lack of financial literacy amongst our citizens. It's very unfortunate because the world of business, the world of adulting has required more and more people to become personally responsible for their own insurance, health insurance, for example, and their own retirement, where previously that was much less of a concern. You know, when large businesses would prepare pensions for all of their employees, which meant that they would get an income for life starting in retirement. That really is a thing of the past now. And most of our citizens have to take care of very often health insurance on their own, and particularly retirement as well. And so the problem for many performing artists is that because they are self-employed independent contractors, the structure of their income is extremely erratic very often, with perhaps periods of time when they get large paychecks all at once with no taxes withheld, and then periods of time, perhaps 6 months or longer, with no paychecks whatsoever. How does one manage that? Our entire country is basically geared toward here's my weekly or bi-weekly paycheck, and here's what I take out for rent and what have you. But if you get a big chunk of change in January and then somehow have to figure out how that's going to last until your next chunk of change in August, that's not an easy thing for most people to manage or figure out. So part of what we wanted very much to share in the book was helping performing artists understand some of the basics of what they need to know as small business owners. And part of that means being able to take on different hats at different times. Um, Being the CEO of their business is very important, but sometimes they have to be the CFO, the chief financial officer, and they have to be able to make sound business decisions. You know, when you're, for example, when you are paying a vocal coach to teach you certain roles and what have you, and you find that after 8 sessions you really haven't progressed that much, the return on investment then is not so great perhaps, and that might necessitate changing coaches in that case. When we are very emotional performers, we tend to not think about that, and we want to be loyal to the coach that we have. And but when you put on your CFO hat and see that the progress is not actually happening, then perhaps it can become a little bit easier to make the changes necessary. But some of the financial information that is necessary to know is, first of all, as you start building a career, there may come a time when you need to ask for professional help in terms of taxes. At the point that I started singing in multiple countries in any given year, I thought, wow, I need a CPA. And I was very fortunate to find one who understood the performing arts, what needed to happen, all of that. And I've had the same CPA for 20 years now. She's amazing. And I basically am very dependent upon her in many ways. Sometime at some point, it may become necessary or prudent to seek the help of a CFP or a financial advisor to help you manage and work towards success for retirement and whatnot. These professionals are available and sometimes are extremely important. But some of the basics that we go through in the book, of course, are things that many of us understand already by default, and that would be how to use checking accounts and savings accounts. But sometimes it's important to understand the distinction between a savings account at your bank and a money market account that you might find with an investment company or an online savings account. These kinds of accounts work very much like a savings account at your bank, but likely pay a much higher rate of interest. And this becomes important if you're going to hold any portion of money there for any period of time. So understanding that's very critical, but also understanding credit cards and how to manage your credit score, your credit report, why it's important to participate in the game of credit. And building up your score is very, very important, because it can mean, particularly for a small business owner, it can mean the ability to buy a house or not buy a house. It can mean the difference between a decent interest rate on your car loan and a really, really high interest rate on your car loan. So playing the game of the credit system is also very important, but doing it wisely and with a larger picture to the whole financial situation is very important. We also go into the idea of different kinds of investments. We discuss the different things that we should know about stocks versus bonds. What are those? Stocks are a portion of ownership in a specific company, whereas bonds are a debt instrument. And so we talk about what the stock market does. Of course, right now is a fun time because we're all dealing with the uncertainty of tariffs coming from our government and the different effects that that's having on our stock market. As we can see, the stock market can be very volatile, and understanding that it's important to buy low and sell high, which means when the stock market is all kinds of crazy and down, that is not the time that we sell. We wait, and that's the moment that we buy so that we can buy things on a discount. But it's important to have an understanding of how the stock market works. And a very important concept that I talk about a lot is the idea of buying and holding. This is perhaps a more conservative approach, but in my opinion, we buy quality investments and hold them for the long haul whenever possible, unless, of course, the money is specifically geared toward a short-term goal, in which case, very much like what we would call an emergency fund, some amount of money should be held in a very, very safe place, i.e. an online savings account, where we can make a little bit of interest, but where we can easily access the money at a drop of a hat when an emergency strikes. So we go into the market, as I said, stocks and whatnot, and bonds. We talk about inflation. That's something that's been a hot topic of late. As you may remember, during COVID, inflation kissed up to about 10%, which was pretty outrageous and horrible for all of us, because that means that my money from one year to the next has 10% less buying power. That's a very, very big effect. The Fed tries to keep that inflation down to between 2 and 3%. But this basically means that if I'm not making on my money that I'm saving, if I'm not making at least 3%, then I'm actually moving backwards, right? So I need to have a portion of my money in the stock market where I have the potential of making much more than 3%, at least over the long haul. We talk about different saving for different specific goals. There are different ways to save for the down payment on a house compared to saving for a comfortable retirement. Certain retirement funds have some great advantages offered by the federal government, tax deferral, for example, and perhaps certain retirement accounts allow you to actually reduce, for tax purposes, the amount of money you're making in a given year, which can be very beneficial. But that same retirement money then comes with some restrictions. If you try to tap into it before you turn the age of 59 and a half, you're going to have a problem. There's going to be income tax owed, but also at least a 10% penalty on what money you take out. So saving the money that you are saving for different goals in different places is very important. Then we also talk about the importance of insurance. Health insurance, wow, is super critical. I'm sure most of you on this call know that. Because in this country, a visit to the hospital for any period of time, for even an accident, can cause serious financial damage, and long-lasting potentially as well. Fortunately for our friends who are performing artists in other parts of the world, that's not as much of a concern. In the EU, of course, many countries have health insurance included in their citizens' rights, which is wonderful. Many of them also have retirement savings included, much like our Social Security as well. So it depends on where you are. Many American singers even will go over to the U and perhaps be part of an opera company over there or a symphony orchestra over there, and can take advantage of those social benefits. But here in this country, planning for your own health insurance as a self-employed person rests entirely on your shoulders, at least after the age of 26, when you can no longer be included on your parents' plan. So finding a way to get health insurance affordably, and insurance that will certainly cover in many instances. For example, there are many policies available right now that will not cover pregnancy or childbirth. And this can be a big problem, even if such a thing is not in your plans. If you are of childbearing age, it's probably the sort of thing you want to have as part of your policy in the off chance that it were to happen. So health insurance becomes very important, as is life insurance. If you have anyone who's dependent upon you and your income, life insurance ensures that they will be cared for even if something happens to you and your income stream stops. car and home insurance most of us have to deal with, but also liability insurance can become an issue for some of us, especially as we're better known in the public eye. We do run the risk potentially of being sued for various reasons. We are in a very litigious society, as many of you know. And so liability insurance is something that should be considered as well. And then there are the different business forms that you might want to investigate. Many of us as self-employed people start out as sole proprietors, and therefore everything that we earn is simply basically listed on our tax returns under our own Social Security numbers. But as we develop the business, as we're looking for protection, liability protection, this kind of thing, it can become prudent to consider different business forms. An LLC, for example, limited liability company, can help offer some liability protection and some other tax advantages as well for a small business owner. And some, depending on the level of income, might even consider becoming an S corporation. So these are all important considerations, and we go into these in quite some detail in the book, also including information that's very important for non-US performing artists. We like to make sure that you know that our book is inclusive of many different countries as well. Back to you, Jonathan.
Great. Thank you, Kirsten. Um, so the last part of the book is about what happens as your dream starts to become reality. If in a long-term career, there are going to be changes that happen. Um, it's important to remember that your career is part of your life, not the other way around. You have to have a fulfilled life, part of which is hopefully a fulfilled career. So we always have to make adjustments and find that career life balance that allows us to not only survive, but thrive. There are things we've already talked a little bit about the importance of choosing a home base that supports your career, but also where you can build a life. As life chugs along, you're going to have some life goals that become more important. Things like having a stable relationship, starting a family, having a home. It may not seem important as you're in your early 20s and just leaving school, but it's going to get more important as you age. There are also important adjustments because of age. Maybe we start out as an ingenue, and then all of a sudden you're playing the leading lady, and then someone's mother, and moving into character roles. You don't have to give up performing. You just have to be aware of how your product, which is you, of course, is changing. Um, we talk about setting realistic benchmarks and again, learning to be resilient to changes in the business, in the marketplace, and yourself. The performing arts are an ever-changing landscape, and we need to be aware of how we fit into it. There are going to be times when a life goal is going to take precedence over a career goal. For example, taking time off to have a baby, taking care of an ailing family member, or when something else in your portfolio starts to become really important to you, or you suddenly have an unexpected opportunity. Learning how to pivot is critical. Again, thinking back to COVID and how we were all forced to turn on a dime. Those are important lessons, and we need to keep that flexibility and resilience there. Back to you, Kirsten.
Thank you, Jonathan. And we're going to start to wrap things up as we want to leave some time for questions.
Yeah,
But
I just wanted to pop in and say also that as soon as we get to questions, we can also, there's the discount on your book. So I want to talk about that as well.
thank you, Leslie. Basically, just in conclusion, for me, I want to remind you that this is your dream you're building. And that means you have the right, but also the responsibility to live it as you wish. Taking ownership, to me, that's absolutely key. If you wait for somebody else to make it happen, the likelihood is that it won't. Just know that you need to be the CEO of your own dream, and that it might veer and turn. It's good to have an idea of what you want, but maybe not such a specific idea that you're not willing to pivot in a direction that actually makes good sense. Very often in life, things end up looking very different from what you would have expected. And very often in life, when that happens, it's usually for the better. So it's important to be in charge, but be flexible and build the dream that you want.
Absolutely. So, thank you again for the opportunity to be with you today. If you want to know more about our book or some of the other classes or workshops we offer on how you live your dream, you can check out our website, which is www.livingthedreamperformingarts.com. Um, and our publisher, Leslie mentioned this, our publisher is Routledge, which is based in the UK, but throughout the world as well. For the Literary Festival, they're offering a special 20% discount for anybody that's on the call today. And Leslie's going to put that information in the chat, the website, and the discount code. So we have been thrilled to be here, and now we're really eager to answer your questions.
Yes, and I see that Mr. Alan Seal has asked us a question about um, agents and managers, how to get them, how to sustain those relationships. I'll take a stab at that, and then you can chime in, Jonathan. But basically, the rule of thumb is, at least for singers, I know it's different for some other kinds of performing artists, but the idea is you don't need a manager until you have something to manage. And so, therefore, the most ideal version of things is if a manager finds you. Um, they come to see a performance and they let you know that they're interested. That's the most ideal situation, in my opinion. As to whether an agent or manager is required, I think it's less critical than it used to be. Perhaps even less critical than pre-COVID. There is still a certain expectation that once one has an agent manager, that one is sort of separated from the chaff, if you will. In other words, that you have passed a certain bar by having representation. So I think there is still that expectation. However, there are a lot more young performers who are just being in touch with companies directly, meeting conductors at a young artist program and following up with them, and getting gigs that way. That certainly is, I think, more prevalent now than it used to be. Jonathan?
Yeah, and the thing that I would say is it's going to vary depending on where you are and what part of the business you're in. So actors and dancers, it's a little bit different than it is for musicians or for singers. Um, Also, the same thing with whether or not you're joining the union. At some point, you will have to join whatever union is representing your particular art form. However, some unions, like for example, AGMA, which it covers dance and opera, is not exclusive, whereas equity, which is covering spoken theater and musical theater, you can't be in a non-equity show once you are equity. The important thing about unions, agents, managers, all of that is even after you have union membership or you are represented by an agent or manager, you are still in charge of your career. Yes, you have help and professional help to do this, but it's it's still on you a lot to keep that going, and to be proactive in that. And I see we have another question from Sally Milliken. What would you recommend for a performer who is in high school as they think about college and the future? So that's really an important question because starting early is very wise. You want, again, to do both things. You have to train the talent. You have to learn about the art form that you are wanting to pursue, but you also really need to take steps to understand who you are as a performer and how you want to live your life. What is it that you have to offer? And I think reading the book is a very good idea. Um, but that's mainly because it really guides you in how to approach who you are as a performer, but also as a person. Choosing a school that gives you opportunities is important, but choosing a school that really fosters the development of your talent and the development of you as an independent artist is also very, very important to consider. So I would recommend for any young artist that is considering this to pursue it in that way. And I see here's another question from Ina Oriah. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. How would you recommend focusing your goals? One fear I often hear from other artists is becoming a jack of all trades, master of none. So um, it's about being a generalist or,
Specialist.
a specialist, right? And part of it is, as we were talking about with a portfolio career, it's not about diluting what you do. It's about doing various things that are part of a portfolio and doing them well. So it's not about being a jack of all trades, it's being a king or a queen of a few specific trades.
Mhm.
Um, and trades that are on mission for you. So, yes, you don't want to dilute, but you do want to diversify. And that's important whether you're talking about a stock portfolio or your portfolio career. Um, and knowing that something that you are passionate about, in addition to your performing, that can also generate some revenue stream is very, very good. So it's not about being so broad that you're diluting everything. It's about being very good at not just one thing, but a few things. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that, Kirsten?
No, I completely agree. And I think the deciding factor is paying attention to what you're passionate about. For some reason, who knows why, I'm passionate about money and understanding how it works and all of that. And so that was an obvious next choice. But I'm also passionate about my teaching. And so it's been relatively easy for me to find those additional parts of my portfolio. But, some of my singers, are interested in web design, um, where I like to encourage them to have a secondary income stream from a kind of business that they can do from anywhere on their own time. And so I say to them, if you're performing a gig in China, you should be able to do your work even from there in the middle of the night, whatever the case might be, so that is a true secondary income stream, etc.
Great. And we have another question here. Do you have any advice for the parent of a Berkeley student who is about to go into the senior year? They're very concerned about making a living right off the bat. What's the most important thing to focus on in the months ahead? Well, the advice for the parent is to encourage your student, your child who is the student, to really start thinking about this now. Yes, focus on the art, whatever that may be. If they're at Berkeley, they may be a recording artist, they may be involved in music technology, they may be a performer in any number of different areas. So yes, focus on that, but also look at how you are going to generate income, how you are going to do things that feed you, that also feed your soul. Start looking at portfolio. What's in your portfolio? What are the things that can help you, as opposed to just getting a day job, being a waiter or a barista or something like that? Yes, that's okay. But if your day job, or if what is paying some of your bills is also something you're passionate about, or at least interested in and on mission, it's far better. And a lot of it for a student, particularly in the undergraduate level or even the high school level, is start investigating mission. Who are you? Why do you want to sing or dance or act? What is it that you're trying to express? That's the mode of expression, but what underneath wants to be expressed? We talk a lot about that, and it is so critical because it is the touchstone that's going to stay with you throughout your career, throughout your life. And it's a really important distinction. For example, Kirsten, you want to say what your mission is?
My mission is I comfort and encourage.
So Kirsten is a singer, and she is a very, very fine singer, but her singing, just like her helping people learn about their finances, is about comforting and encouraging them. So that's the underlying energy that feeds that. And if you can use that as the touchstone for all of your decision making, it really helps.
Amen.
Yeah. And I know we're coming close to the end of our time here. Leslie, do have time for one more question, or
Sure, if there's one more question, let's do it.
let me see. No, I think that's it. That's all that's showing up right now. So again, thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Newburyport Literary Festival. This is an amazing, amazing thing for Newburyport, but also for the world. And congratulations on the 20th successful year.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really related to so much of what you're talking about. I am not an artist, can't carry a tune in a bucket, but I'm a freelance writer. And so almost all of that, especially about the insurance, about, how you're going to do your taxes. So, almost exactly the same for me,
Yes.
Absolutely. It
and,
Yes.
applies across
and I
so
think
many.
sorry, more and more people are going into freelance out of necessity
Yes.
because companies are, they understand how expensive healthcare can be and they don't want to do it. Now,
Right.
if we really want to bring businesses back to America, I say we institute universal healthcare. You heard it here first. Well, actually, Hillary started it probably before her and then Obama. But anyway, we won't go further there. On that note, thank you both so much for this very interesting talk. I'm thrilled you all could be here. Thanks to our participants for joining, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.
You all.
Bye, everyone.